The topic that I chose to talk about today is mediated interpersonal communication from Chapter 7 in our book. Now, our book describes this as communication that occurs between two people when they are trying to mutually influence each other through the use of a mediated channel, usually for the purpose of maintaining a relationship. Now, we do this every day without even realizing it. Maybe you call your mom every day from school, or you call your significant other or your best friend that lives in a different state. So this is something that we're all familiar with, but we just may have not have realized it. So the experience I'm going to talk about today is with my boyfriend and I going to different schools our first semester in college. He was going to Belton, Texas, UMHB, the University of Mary Hardin Baylor, to play football, and I was over here at UTSA. Now, this was only about a 2.5 hour difference at most, but since he was in football, it made things a little more difficult because he had games on the weekends, and when he didn't have games, he had bye-week practice, and so it was just a few more obstacles to go through. Now, we had just been dating a few months before we were both going to be going off to college, and we had to make the decision of, do we want to continue on or not? Now, we've known each other for 5 years before this, so we made the decision to keep up the relationship through the means of mediated interpersonal communication. Now, we didn't call it that, but we both agreed to texting and calling and FaceTiming to see if we could maintain our relationship. So both of us made this decision together, and it ended up working out. We're still dating today, but it was a lot more difficult than we both had thought. Whenever you're communicating through means of a mediated channel, it's a little different and it has its differences that we maybe didn't think of in the very beginning, but if you put the right effort into it, it eventually will work out. So now that I've discussed the experience, I'll make some inferences. Mediated communication both has its similarities and its differences to regular face-to-face interpersonal communication. Some similarities are that you still can see the person, at least visually, and you can still talk about things as if you were together, and you can keep updated with that person, let them know what's going on in your life. But some noticeable differences are, one is there's no physical contact, and it's been known that people kind of need that in order to maintain relationships. So let's say they tell you some really exciting news, they got 100 on their test that they've been studying for all week. You can't give them a hug or a high five, or maybe if they have some sad news, you can't be there to comfort them, give them a pat on the back, or hold their hand. And another big difference that not a lot of people may think about is things come across differently in an email or a text than maybe they would in face-to-face. Let's say you say something and put an exclamation point at the end of it. To them, that may mean you're yelling at them, but really you wanted it to come across as excitement. So it's just a little bit of differences that you have to keep in mind. So now that I've made some inferences, I'll talk about how they can be transferred into other situations. Mediated communication is generally a good option for many reasons. You can meet people online that you haven't been able to maybe meet in real life, or maybe you've met someone somewhere else when you're on vacation or at school and you want to keep in contact with them and not just totally lose that relationship. But it's definitely a different experience. So in conclusion, we live in a world where we use mediated communication every day, even without realizing it. I'm using it right now by making this little video for our discussion board. Even though we use it every day at work or school or with our friends or our relatives, it's very difficult when you're using it to sustain a relationship over an extended period of time versus just using it every now and then. So if you choose mediated communication as a means of maintaining a relationship, just remember it's different and be willing to work through them.